what's missing in the space is someone cheering for lentils and someone reminding people that you can do it and it doesn't cost that much and it's delicious and it's really central to you taking care of your mental health. The data has just been so robust at this point that people are like, sure, of course eating more avocados is going to be helpful for brain health and more fatty fish and seafood and more vegetables. Brainbows is about one of these simple ways. How do we translate all this science into its dinner time?
This is Doctor Talks. Dr. Drew Ramsey, I love talking to you. You are a wealth of knowledge. I love your TED Talks. I love listening to you because you're funny, you're fun, and I'm so excited that you and I are co-hosting these Doctor Talks. You know, when we were first approached, I thought, oh, yay, I love talking with someone. I love interviewing other people with a co-host. And then I was disappointed to think, oh my gosh, we have to do it separately. So this is so cool that we can actually interview each other, but would have been really fun to both of us interview a person at the same time. So welcome, Dr. Drew Ramsey. You're an amazing, such an inspiration, and thank you for doing this.
Well, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, thank you. And everybody, it's just been a treat. We've about in the middle of this, behind the scenes here. So we've been interviewing experts and talking about all of the great solutions that are out there for symptoms of depression, struggles with mood, symptoms of anxiety. And so, yeah, it's been a really treat. I love our overlapping networks and also some of the new people that I'm meeting and getting introduced to. And then also just all of the exciting science and all of the movement going on around mental health and us all doing a better job taking care of ourselves. So what a treat to be with you. And everybody, thanks so much for all of your support of our Solutions Summit. I mean, it's just been really exciting. And yeah, it's a treat to be with you.
I agree with you so much. So thank you for that. Well, Drew, I really want to dive into what your expertise is, and maybe you can just take 2 minutes to tell people who you are and what you do. And then there's so many great things that we're going to cover this morning that are going to help people tremendously.
Well, sure, everybody. So I'm a psychiatrist mostly. I mean, this is my couch. I love having it in the summit. I mostly see people by Zoom. I've really always been a clinician, which to me really means working for patients. And I love that because there's so much going on in mental health. There's so much new research. Patients like yourselves are so much more informed. Those of you who are in clinical care, the ability to learn about the mind and mental health and how things like nutrition affect mental health. That research just exploded over the last 15 years.
Oh, it did.
And so mostly I'm a clinician, I'm a psychiatrist. I spent most of my career in New York City. Pre-pandemic, I was there for about 20 years. I was on the faculty at Columbia University, working in the Department of Psychiatry, doing a lot of different types of teaching of psychotherapy. And mostly, though, I'm known for nutritional psychiatry, which is this marriage of thinking about food and mental health, and began that work really through my interest in how do we get people more excited about mental health and how do we meet people earlier. So often there's this idea you're going to meet a psychiatrist. It's like, oh, you're at rock bottom, and it's horrible. And I hate that. I love working with people when they want to optimize their mental health, when they're struggling with maybe a symptom or a trauma or a memory or just, something that they have a question of in their mental health and how to improve it, whether it's their mood stability or their sleep or their motivation or their focus. And so nutritional psychiatry for me really has become part of this mental fitness movement, and thinking about it as a mental health clinician and as someone who wants to influence this conversation. What are the things we really want people to do? Because oftentimes it's like we're all against stigma, but there's still a little bit of an avoidance stance when it comes to what we do. Often because we call that, it's treatment. So recently, I've been really interested in this idea of healing the modern brain. It's an e-course and it's a new book that's coming out, which is about these tenets of mental fitness. And so nutrition is one of them. And that's been a big part of my career. As I say, I grew up really rural Indiana. I've grown a lot of food. I lived on a farm with my parents and my wife and kids for about 4 years in between New York and where I am now in Wyoming. And then I guess the other thing, I'm sitting here in my new clinic in Wyoming at Spruce Mental Health. We've got a wonderful team of psychiatrists and clinicians of a psychedelic medicine program here, really trying to prepare ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the next steps of psychedelic medicine, but we know there's a lot of interesting new research. And so as a clinician, I just wanted to be prepared, because whenever you introduce new technology, new techniques into an established system of evidence-based care, it's just, there's all kinds of, I've never had a animal spirit creature card deck in my office before, Caroline, but now I do. And
Fantastic. I love it.
And it's a real shift as a doctor to go from sitting with individuals really in a integrative but somewhat conventional stance, listening as psychiatrists often listen, to symptoms, and then to shift into, these other stances, really thinking about prevention, getting excited about whether people know how to make pesto or not. I would say that's, in terms of got me waxing on about my career. So we should get into specifics here. But I think the bottom line is I'm a psychiatrist. I love talking about mental health. I love creative media and getting people excited about their mental health. I've started a podcast recently. I've got some great books like Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. There's more about me in the show notes and the bio, but Dr. Leaf, let's get to your questions. Let's get to the solutions that exist within nutritional psychiatry and mental fitness. So everybody who's listening can really leave this talk getting the very best of what I can offer.
Well, I thank you, Drew. I'm glad you said that, because I just want to reiterate, I'm really glad that you said what you said, because there's not many psychiatrists in this current day and age that are still doing psychotherapy, still have the couch, still are really focusing on proactive, preventative, as you say, not coming to the psychiatrist when things are falling apart so badly that you can't function, but actually proactively taking charge of your mental health. I also love how you say in your TEDx talks, how you talk about the fact that we should not be focusing on mental illness, but on mental health. You say so many things, and I'm much older than you. I'm 61. I've been in this field for so many years. And so when I hear someone like you talking in the way you do, I get so thrilled and excited, because I have watched over the last 40 years, I have watched what's happened in psychiatry. And I feel like, this is where things were. So it's almost like we've gone back to the best and going forward with better. And, you embody that. So thank you for that. So great stuff. So I love the couch. And one of your talks, you said something about one of your patients spoke about the brainbows. And I thought this was just so cute. And this is like, what did I write down here? I see you as the building brainbows doctor, So, just a fun thing, because you're so into helping people in a proactive way. So let's talk about nutritional psychiatry. As you say, for the last 15 years, this has been a big deal. I actually wrote a book almost 15 years ago as well around this, or 12 years ago around this topic. And it was really like when I first talked about this, people thought I was crazy. And, now it's really common, and people have a better understanding, but you have a wonderful way of explaining it. So take the floor. Tell us about, there's so many angles we can go in. I'm going to let you lead the way. I'll jump in with some questions, but let's talk about these brainbows, microbiome, all these amazing things that we can actually do, supplements, all that sort of thing, because I know you have a very unique stance on supplements, because it's very overwhelming for people. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Leaf. I think we'll start out with, I like being your food guy. And so I like thinking, because there's a lot of talk of supplements, medications, all these things, lots of evidence. And I think about some of those for sure. But mostly I felt like what's missing in the space is someone cheering for lentils. And someone reminding people that you can do it, and it doesn't cost that much, and it's delicious, and it's really central to you taking care of your mental health. And so this is called nutritional psychiatry, and there are really a handful of us, folks like myself and Dr. Uma Naidu at Harvard, Chris Palmer, Georgia Yadis, Emily Deans. Really small cadre, a few folks I'm sure I'm missing, Shabandi Sethi at Stanford, individuals in mental health thinking about how nutrition, it's called nutritional psychiatry or metabolic psychiatry, is really, I guess those are two different things, but ways that what we do in our lifestyle and what we eat and consume influence our mental health. I define nutritional psychiatry as the use of nutrition. And by that, again, I mean food. Like you say magnesium, I'm like, what's your favorite food source? You say folate, I'm like, you love lentils, don't you? I'm going to say lentils a lot of times in this half an hour. That's going to be my main, everyone, that's your main takeaway from me. Lentils, lentils, lentils.
Lentils, brainbows and lentils. What was this talk about? Brainbows and lentils.
Brainbows and lentils. And so the use of nutrition, food, to optimize brain health. A lot of times we'll see this statistic, right? 1 in 5 of us are struggling with depression or a mental illness at some time during any given year. And I really don't like that statistic so much, because it kind of others all of us who are struggling with our mental health. And instead I really like thinking like we are all arm in arm. All of us want to optimize our brain health. And we all know, everyone in medicine, everyone in psychiatry, that lifestyle factors like nutrition are at the heart of that. And you and I are really compatriots in a way that I started early too. And there's a little bit of pushback, but the great thing about food is it's such both common sense, and everybody knows that the data has just been so robust at this point that people are like, sure, of course, eating more avocados is going to be helpful for brain health, and more fatty fish and seafood and more vegetables. Brainbows is about one of these simple ways, how do we translate all this science into it's dinner time? And you're looking at your plate, or you go to lunch after this talk, and you go to maybe the cafeteria where you work, and you look at your plate. How do you know that it's great for your brain health? And so one way is to think about the colors on the plate. And we have one of the experts in the Solutions Summit, Dr. Deanna Minnick, who's all about polyphenols. And so the colors in plants, they're appealing to us visually. It's not just Instagram that made us love making food beautiful. Food styling has been around since there have been pictures in cookbooks, since before that, right? Think about all of the, great masters. What we paint our food. It's like
exactly.
So the brainbows are thinking about, look at your plate. Are there 3 colors? Can you add another color? I always ask my family, can you put another color in there? Chop up a little red pepper. I love to dribble on these microgreens that are just, wow, so packed with phytonutrients. And so brainbows are about trying to get more polyphenols, more colorful flavanol or carotenoid, so phytonutrients. So molecules that we find in plants. A lot of times we'll hear, I would say, some negative misinformation, plants are protecting themselves with all these toxins. Sure, there's some of that going on in plants, but our interaction with plants, it's so nuanced, it's so complex. If you're worried about, anti-nutrients, that's why we cook our food. And for the most part, again, looking at all of these whole natural foods, whether it's the kale I grow in my greenhouse, Dr. Leaf, I've got these 2 lacinato plants right now that are just, they're going off. It's cold.
Oh, I'm so
here in
jealous.
Wyoming. Dropped down to 45 last night, 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So and so that causes the kale leaves to start to kind of sweeten up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Back to nutritional psychiatry. We want to optimize brain health, all of us, and then to get down to the science, I treat depression, anxiety, mental health disorders, and psychiatric conditions. The goal of this work is, can we do a better job preventing those conditions with lifestyle interventions? Mm-hmm. Can we help teens eat better? Can we help college students eat better? Do we have some emerging evidence that in doing that we can prevent depression? Yes, we do. That data now exists. And by we, I mean mostly Australia, because most of the data is coming out of the Food and Mood Center there, led by Felice Jacka, Michael Burke, and their team. It's really kind of changed the landscape for the evidence over the past 10 years. But nutritional psychiatry and prevention and treatment of mental health disorders. So I see someone with clinical depression. Prior to maybe 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't ask that patient, hey, tell me about your diet. What do you eat? And just put yourself in our shoes. We're treating, let's say, clinical depression, right? If I have someone who is a vegetarian or eating a vegan diet, right? A lot of times in medicine, there's red flags with that. Whereas in nutritional psychiatry, that's at the center of some of our curiosity. What you're eating, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you're doing such a better job on fiber, you're doing such a better job with your microbiome. Those are often the folks who are eating so many fermented foods. So we want to go over all the amazing things these individuals are doing, and then think from a brain health standpoint, okay, in the larger data sets, you see lower intakes of things like zinc, iron, protein. What is this, again, clinical situation? What is this individual in front of me, my patient? How do they interact with those foods that contain these nutrients? Are they one of the veggies or vegans who are way up on, they got nutritional yeast on their popcorn and they're eating lots of B12 and they know all about that? Or there's somebody who maybe got into this lifestyle because of maybe some ethical reasons. Mm-hmm. And they haven't thought about some of the nutritional implications and their sluggedness, their fatigue, there's some of maybe brittle nails or hair loss, or, some of these symptoms that are mysterious are actually just, they're not having enough of, let's say, iron or B12 or zinc in their diet. Mm. And so nutritional psychiatry is really about trying to understand your relationship with food, both the nutrients and then these big food categories. And a lot of my talks, you'll hear me rhyme my seafood, greens, nuts and beans, and a little dark chocolate. Dark chocolate with all of the lead and cadmium worries now. It's hard to, but I still think dark chocolate is
essential.
It's essential, and it's such a great example for us of our biases, right? We think dark chocolate's it's my guilty treat, or, it's a way of making dessert better, or we take dark chocolate and put it on a cake and we're like, brain health, this is brain health cake. Like that. No,
doesn't quite work.
That's how it works. And so, but thinking about these food categories, I'm guilty of promoting kale a lot and thinking about singular foods. I'm getting excited about singular foods, kale, lentil, kimchi, kefir, because we eat singular foods. But my thinking really expanded, especially when Lauren Lunch and I published the Antidepressant Food Scale, which is an open source paper. You kind of see our thinking of just trying to begin a conversation really of, if you wanted to think of the most important nutrients for depression, not from a content side, like, oh, we all know omega-3s are great, but from a data side, what does actually research say? 12 nutrients emerged, and we just asked this really simple question: what foods in the natural food world have the highest nutrient density of these 12 nutrients? So the most of these 12 nutrients per 100 calories. And it just really fascinating to see what emerged, because if you look at this, you can look at the list, and watercress is the top plant. And, some people eat that. It's a traditional food in Haiti. It's almost with every meal, I've been told. But a lot of people have never eaten watercress, and their mental health's fine. So it's obviously not the secret: eat more watercress, eat more oysters. Some people don't like those foods or will never eat them. But it's more of those groupings, right? What are 3 of the top 5 on the animal side of things are bivalves: mussels, clams, and oysters. And that was something that was never part of my diet growing up in Indiana. But as I began to eat more seafood, as I began to explore nutrient density, calorie per calorie, kind of nutrient density basic, it's hard to beat a bivalve. You get so much B12. Clams actually are the top nutritional source of vitamin B12.
Okay. Do you mind if I quickly interrupt you there? I just want to help because you're saying the most incredible stuff, and I don't want people to miss it. You mentioned, you give a great example of calories. We shouldn't be eating calories to try and lose weight. We should be eating calories for food density, and I love that. And you talk about how a kale salad's 140 calories and a soda's 140 calories, and it's such a great way of people. I just wanted to underscore that, so people don't think that you're trying to push calories. You're actually trying to help people understand the density of foods, the quality of what you're putting inside your body.
Yeah.
I love that the way you explained that. And
I'm trying to push nutrients with this idea that calories are useless unless we calculate nutrient density. And it's not a complex calculation. And in some ways, you skip the math. If you want the math hack, so you're not like, 62 calories, like, right? The math hack really is looking at these food categories and these foods that we highlight in all the book. This book, highlights lots of foods.
It's great stuff.
Because that's where you're going to find the nutrient density. When we're talking about a clam and I say top B12, what I mean is that if you eat a few ounces of it with your pasta vongole, you got 1,200% of your daily need of vitamin B12. And vitamin B12 is one of these nutrients that we store. We store years of vitamin B12 in your liver. So it's a really nutrient density for me as a physician who'd been raised in that calorie world was really exciting, because calories in, calories out, that's very true. It's very important. People are eating too many calories. But one way that I guess I think about that is, what if you envision that your mind, your brain, is seeking calories because it's not getting enough of certain things? It's not getting enough magnesium and folate. 90+% of Americans aren't getting enough fiber. We're not getting protein often, or we're getting way too much protein and not enough fiber because we're not, people aren't eating plants. And so nutrient density really excites me. It shifted how I thought about food, how I thought about what I was feeding my kids, the types of foods I buy and get excited about. It just really helped me. And so I hope it's helpful to everybody watching. I appreciate you highlighting it, Caroline, that idea of a can of Coke, 140 calories, small kale salad, 2 or 3 cups of chopped kale and a little olive oil, salt and pepper. Maybe I'd put something interesting in there that doesn't have a ton of calories, like some microgreens or a little cumin or who knows, about 140 calories. And in one, I'm getting olive oil. I'm getting, and that's so much vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin C, fiber, all the stuff, plus all those brainbow, all those phytonutrients you find in the dark leafy greens. So you get all of that for 140 calories versus, a can of soda where you're just,
it's nothing.
Apparently you're opening a can of happiness, but I don't think so. That's sort of sugar and a little bit of salt. And, again, not that you can never have that in your diet. It's just an example of those are empty calories. And
bringing the balance in. Yeah. You gave another example in one of your talks as well about one of your patients that came in and was really battling with depression, and you did all the the traditional things, plus your great psychotherapy. I'm so glad that you still do therapy, as I keep saying. Thank you for doing that. And then you turned out that you decided, well, it wasn't working, and you asked her, well, what are you eating, and she hadn't eaten breakfast. She was on some juice fast. She was no fat, no eggs because of this and the calories. And I thought all these things and messages, Drew, that we've been getting over the years of, don't eat butter, don't eat eggs, don't eat this, too many calories. It's been all the wrong stuff, and it's created so many problems. And, I just enjoyed that. And I'd love you to just sort of carry on teaching what you're teaching, but just wanted to tell people how I found that really exciting when you asked that question and found out that stuff. And not that you're saying don't do a juice fast, but, be careful. I think that's what you're trying to say. Be careful, balance.
Yeah, and there's a time and the place for extreme moves. I think the ketogenic diet is a good example of that. I just had a wonderful talk with Austin Perlmutter, who we also have in the summit.
Yes.
I love, everyone check out this. I love how Austin talks about what he calls extreme diets. And there's a time and a place. Too. There's a different for general recommendations. There's a way to do things safely and a way not to do things safely. Caroline, just to get back to first of all, thank you for what you said about psychotherapy and talk therapy. I think as everyone hears throughout the summit, there's a level of introspection and a caring of the self. And one of the core tenets of mental fitness and in healing the modern brain and kind of the orientation and the framework I've been thinking about is around unburdening. Unburdening is a way that a lot of therapies, whether it's internal family systems or psychodynamic therapies, think about the processing of trauma. And whether those are the explicit traumas we think about, violent traumas, or, subtler or not so subtle developmental traumas, being ignored, being in competition with a parent or a sibling. There's so much that happens to us. It's just so deeply personal. And as I said in the TED Talks, this is the most complex brain scanner in existence, the couch.
The couch. I love that.
I want to hear it in your words, in your own personal narrative and experience. What's getting you is one of my mentors, another great Solution Summit guest. I'm sorry to keep naming everyone. I just love all these
That's great.
sort of legends. Too. But Dr. Jim Gordon really talked about our whole approach to trauma is kind of off. So I love you mentioning that. And for anyone in mental health, psychotherapy is really at the core of your work. And if you're struggling in integrating these ideas, if something's resonating with you right now, something that you haven't worked through, or as we say, processed, it's a great place. I hope this summit really brings you to someone's couch to get to that work, because it makes all of these interventions much more powerful. So thanks for saying that, Caroline, about psychotherapy and about talk therapy. It's just a core piece of this work and a core piece of mental fitness.
Love it. That's beautiful. Also, so let's pick back up on you were talking about the food groups, and I'd love us to also talk about the microbiome, which these people are becoming so much more educated. You have a cute way of saying that. You have such a cute way of saying that. You say you go to doctors to get rid of bugs, and now we're telling you to put bugs in you. So
I know it's like our favorite. These two things happened. I think it was 1912. There's sort of a couple things that happened. We discovered penicillin, right? So for the first time, and this is like changes World War I, right? We have this idea that, wow, we can kill bacteria. You're not going to just die from an infection. It's like amazing. And bacteria, the enemy, things go super sterile. Like we want like stainless steel. We want sterile stuff. We want antibiotics. What else do we want sterile? We want our food sterile. And how are we going to achieve this? Well, another great discovery in 1912, Crisco. And so Crisco literally comes across the pond, there's a German biochemist who told the story in The Happiness Diet, William Kaiser. I have this image in my head of him. He's on like a boat, right? He's got like a little vial of basically, this is, partially hydrogenated. It was cottonseed oil back then. And they're going to turn this food waste product into a food, right? Cottonseed oil is not something we ate. They partially hydrogenate it. They create Crisco. It pushes trans fats into the food supply. And so it's this big period of change. And so all these things sort of shift 1912. Another thing that happens is we have the cigarette rolling machine gets invented. And I'm not a big history buff, but a few of these changes, like this year, is just
quite significant.
It's also, we discover the first vitamin. And so this era, right, where vitamin B1 is like, wow, there's actually this thing called vitamin B1 and it's defined, thiamine. And so there's this real, very recent revolution in kind of how we think about food, we think about things like bacteria. And so yes, as physicians, we love to kill bacteria. And then all of a sudden now we're asking people to eat live bacteria, eat refrigerated, foods from the refrigerated, fermented section, make sauerkraut yourself, think about yogurt and kefir. All of my smoothies and all of my books have a fermented food component. They have kefir because I found people like yogurt for the most part, if you're not totally against dairy. And fermented dairy is really quite interesting, but mostly there's all these CFUs, these colony forming units. There's just a higher concentration and a larger diversity than you find in other fermented foods. And so given that patients, are a little unfamiliar often with fermented foods, it's just an example of a really fun food category for people to think about. Maybe it's a real radical shift in your health. Maybe it's not. But that's one of these, again, new ideas. We think about it just quickly, Caroline, it feels like you take us back to the beginning of nutritional psychiatry with my parent, well, she's in some ways one of the parents of nutritional psychiatry. It's this moment I had with the patient, we'll call her Kay. And she'd come in, she was juice fast, she was doing all this kind of trendy stuff to lose weight. She'd been at like a 5 a.m. workout. And it struck me, in the midst of this depression she was in, she was working so hard. Right? She wanted to lose weight. And part of the shift in how I was thinking, probably as a therapist, and probably what that couch has taught me, is the way that we think about bodies, the way we think about health, the kind of oppressive nature of the patriarchy of thinking about women's bodies and women's health around weight, around certain parts of their bodies. It's just been so damaging to mental health.
Oh, it has been terrible. The eating disorders and...
It's been awful. And then the way that we approach it in medicine, right? That if, for example, you're a veggie or a vegan, or you are on an anti-inflammatory diet.
Or a carnivore or whatever, there's all these, so many,
We often don't approach it through curiosity. And we often don't ask about it other than maybe, a door handle. I remember when my wife was pregnant with our son, and we got to the door and the OB-GYN said, well, and keep eating healthy. And I thought, I was like really grateful she said something.
Yeah.
And maybe it's also I'm a physician, I'm supposed to know something about nutrition, but I thought it was also striking that for a lot of people, that's helpful encouragement, but it's not so sure what to do then for lunch. And so I really appreciate you kind of taking back to this moment of nutritional psychiatry. This was for me about 2004, right when I finished residency and I started in practice. Then we think about now, what these new concepts. I go through them in Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety to kind of say, hey, depression and anxiety, it's shifted. We still think about development. I still love talking to you about all of the details of who you are and your unique internal world. Yeah, there's a lot of new evidence and a lot of new research, around other treatments for sure. But there's also this, robust and growing set of evidence around food and these new concepts, inflammation, the microbiome, again, all the organisms living in our gut. Inflammation is this idea that we have this amazing alarm system. It's amazing. It learns. It's like the immune system's incredible. It's really getting turned on right now. And as everybody knows, I sometimes give an analogy. It was like if you were in high school in America, we take this test, the SAT, to get into college, right? And you went in to take the SAT, and someone pulled the fire alarm, and you're sitting there with your little bubbles, and the sprinklers turn on, and the sirens are blaring, and the flashing lights are going, but you've got to finish the SAT. There's no do-over here.
Yeah,
you're going to get it done. I believe in you, right? But you're going to do worse. You're not going to do as well because you can't focus, right? Because the alarms are going off. And so excess inflammation, which is really, really one of the things I think 60% of Americans now are obese. Maybe I'm getting that statistic wrong. I saw that recently, though. It's a very high number.
It's a high number.
People around the world are struggling with all types of metabolic challenges. The issue also is, since we're talking about depression and anxiety, there's all kinds of ways that inflammation is triggered by these disorders, right? About 30 to 40% of patients who have treatment-resistant depression, awful phrase, everybody agrees, right? I've never seen anybody resist treatment. Like, oh, there's something that's going to take this depression away. Like,
I know,
no,
it's such an awful word.
It's an awful, but for folks who we haven't helped yet in terms of understanding their depression and better treating their depression, there's such a connection between inflammation for some of those individuals and their mood state and their depression. There's a lot of data, for example, individuals who are on an anti-inflammatory plus a medication, those meds are like twice as effective. And so so inflammation, new concept in mental health. I bet by the time the summit comes out, there'll start being more data about the GLP-1 medication.
Yeah. Yes, that's
about those in weight. But boy, so many of my patients take them and stop smoking, don't want to drink anymore. Their self-esteem shifts, the chatter that they've tried so hard to quiet about
addictive
food.
problems. Yeah.
It's just so, we're in this very exciting time where new concepts like inflammation are being applied directly to mental health. And again, The idea that after this, you eat a really nutrient dense meal full of brainbows, and then you think about some of the advice in the summit and you call a friend you haven't talked to for a while and you just catch up. Or you just send them a picture or text, hey, I was thinking about you. So you work on connecting, you work all these elements of mental fitness that we're talking about. It's really wonderful to think about these different systems. At lunch, I also want you to eat some fermented foods to affect the microbiome, but these different systems that are influencing our health and our mental health and helping us, I think, also feel this notion that we don't have total control. We have some. I was talking to a patient this week who was really had been doing really well and just kind of had crashed and wasn't clear why, needed a session, squeezed an extra session in. And I met with her and she had this really very clear and kind of poignant assessment, essentially, of, she's doing very well, but it just kind of, modern life had gotten a little overwhelming for her. And it was just this, to me, lovely moment about how the modern world does require a new extra set of skills. That's really what healing the modern brain is about, thinking about your mental fitness and thinking about these new concepts. Neuroplasticity, also, we got to say, I'm sorry to keep going on, Carolyn, but just this new idea of you can make your brain or help your brain grow and repair itself.
It's been my life's work, neuroplasticity, so I cannot agree. I'm so glad you brought that concept up. It's incredible to know. What I'm hearing you saying, Drew, is it's very encouraging. We have moved over the last 40 years or even 50 years, from being quite holistic prior to 40 years of neuro-reductionism. And then there's this move back, and it has been creepy. It's not like it ever went away, the holistic approach, but there was a very dominant neuro-reductionistic approach. And now there's this holistic approach, and you very much embody that in the work that you do in helping a person. We've got to talk, we've got to connect, we've got to text, we've got to watch and there's very specific awareness that we need to have of how our diets have changed and the role that plays in depression and anxiety. So I know that we're coming close to the end of our interview, and there's just so much more I want to ask you. And I know you've got books that people can get their hands on and so much great advice. How would you summarize a sort of overview? Where can people start to, because there's the microbiome, there's different diets, and I love that you don't just push one diet. You're very anti that. You're very much about getting natural holistic foods that are healthy and not going to, that are full of hydrogenated fats and that kind of thing. How does a person begin? Because as we know, there's just so much supplements. What do they do? What are the first, can you give us a few steps to just get this process going?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you, Carolyn, for bringing it back to that. Let me just share what we do in our clinic. And we have a wonderful food coach and chef, which is where Emily Berner. Emily has been such a wonderful partner with me, as Samantha Elkrief on my team, who is now a full-time therapist, kind of came to us doing a lot of work in the food world as a chef and as a coach. And so I've really been inspired by a lot of the members on my team who understand food, and it's just, I really want to, mention them. That's one of the first places that I have people start. But in clinically, when I assess food and when I sit with individuals, I really want to hear about your dietary pattern, and I'm looking for opportunities. I'm looking for things that you already know you're struggling with. I'm also looking for some of the things that you're doing great, or some of the things that you're close to doing great. You love avocados, or you like to snack on raw, unsalted nuts, or you really love yogurt, you just haven't eaten it in a long time. I'm looking for your relationship again with that little rhyme: seafood, greens, nuts and beans, and dark chocolate, and thinking about these food categories. And then I'm thinking about some of the, what get pegged as controversial, but, eggs, meat, dairy, but people eat those. And so again, as a clinician, I'm just like, well, what are you doing? Are you eating a ham sandwich every day, or are you like smoking a brisket in your backyard with your buddies? Those are different meat experiences. Those affect your health in different ways in my mind. And so for everyone watching, where I'd ask that you start is settling down just for a moment, taking a breath, uncrossing your legs, and just appreciating how incredible it is that you can eat so many different things and you can create a human consciousness with it. I mean, that's the part that still blows my mind, whether it's an avocado or a lemonade iced tea or a shrimp cocktail, right? Or a salad. You're maybe a different mood state over time or anxiety state with some of these dietary patterns per the data, but it's kind of amazing to me that everything functions. And so I try to appreciate that. And I try to think about some of what my body is asking for in a real way. So often we don't take this seriously and we joke, my body's asking for more ice cream. I have a bit of a sweet tooth. So I really differentiate that type of craving or desire or, things that make me salivate to, really what my body's asking for. A lot of times for me, that's more plants, or I live at altitude over a mile up in Jackson. So a lot of times for me, that's water.
Yeah.
And to think about, what you're asking for and needing. And a lot of times I see with patients, it often doesn't start with food or diet plan. It starts with space. People don't have any space for honoring their nutrition, their self-nourishment, for seeking out the foods that, a lot of people love: pears, watermelon, raspberries, cucumbers. There's this TikTok phenomena right now, the cucumber guy, about all the different ways he makes cucumbers. I think it's so wonderful because cucumber is such an awesome vegetable.
Yeah, it is.
So easy. So starting out with, again, what you're knowing you need, and then thinking through these food categories in a very kind of looking at your dietary pattern. Think about, Dr. Leaf brought up brainbows. Think about colorful vegetables. I love the recommendation of Tim Spector that we should be trying. He's a top microbiome researcher, wonderful follow on Instagram, incredible individual. I love him for inspiration, but he encourages us to eat 30 plants a week, 30 different plants a week. And boy, I love it when I look down and I'm like, I got 9 plants on the plate this very meal. Like Tim would be proud. So getting those crunchy vegetables in there again, and keeping it simple, folks. I think so often we get caught up with like this complex, macro ratio. And I don't like to use myself as an example too much, but I've really tried to live this lifestyle, eating a mostly whole foods diet, other than my ice cream and sweet problem, really trying to keep it simple. And so those are some of the places to start looking at those food categories. If you want to get specific for anxiety and depression, I really like people looking at their seafood and meat consumption patterns, thinking about where are those fatty fish, wild salmon. Really recently, it's a lot of focus on plants. I just find that people are really struggling to do that well, to do that deliciously. A lot of people actually in Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety, I have a pesto formula in here. So you can make your own pesto, whether it's pistachios, or Rebecca Katz, the great mood food chef, was telling me about traditional Sicilian pesto being pistachio based.
Yes.
And I had no idea. So there's so much just wonderful ways to approach food. I think another thing people struggling with who have anxiety and depression symptoms, and I just want to honor this for everybody, is, not feeling a lot of motivation or hopefulness or energy or optimism. This stuff is easy to say and a talk here and get enthusiastic and excited about. If you're feeling really depressed, you're having a hard time getting out of bed, a kefir smoothie with 4 ingredients can just sound like way too complex and overwhelming. Anybody who struggles with depression, sometimes to me, like the grocery store is a little bit of a litmus test. If I'm in there and I'm really not excited about all of the opportunity, whether I'm trying to save money and be economical, whether I'm trying to get more diversity of plants, or whether I'm trying to explore more seafoods, it's really, for most individuals, a lot of individuals, there's an incredible diversity of options now for all of us.
That's true.
And when I'm not excited that I'm in there, I know something's kind of off with my mood. Or if I'm racing through and I know there's something off with my kind of anxiety and organization, I'm not there in the way that I need to be. So that's a long-winded answer, everybody. But I guess where I'd like to ask you to start is really at the heart of nutritional, so the soul of nutritional psychiatry. I go all the way back to that patient in 2004. Sitting with her, I think what I ask people to do is really think about the heart of nourishing yourself with food, taking care of your mental health, feeding your mental health, and doing that in a way that really, honors the nutrients that your mind needs, and that you can find those in these food categories. And by adding more of them in, you're really taking care of a lot of the challenging deficiencies people have in things like fiber, live bacterial containing foods, polyphenols like the brainbows, and getting out a lot of the stuff that, we know are causing problems, ultra-processed foods, all the stuff that's quick, that's easy, that's delicious, that is at the heart of American food often, right? Hot dogs and pizza and hamburgers and French fries. And just really honoring the science. It's not that you can't have any of those things, but those actually can't form the core of your diet. if you want to optimize your mental health and your brain health. They can't. It's not compatible with healthy physiology.
And just going hand in hand with that is that you can't go and eat like that and then just think you can supplement your way to health. And there's obviously a role for everything. But could you just in a minute or so sort of talk a little bit, because that's a question people are asking. It's very common. What about the supplement industry, which is overwhelming?
I think about the supplement industry like I think about the pharmaceutical industry. They're in the exact same spot. They're not any different to me. When I went off to college, my mom pulled me aside. I was kind of a hippie, and she sort of looked at me and she said, "Look, no pills, no powders." And and I don't think she meant that in an anti-supplement or anti-psychopharmacological way. I prescribe lots of medications. I help people sort out their supplements. I have lots of patients who take lots of things. But for me, as I said, I like being the food guy and thinking about a food first philosophy.
I love it.
And I think all of us, me too, we have that hope. We have that hope that there's going to be that kind of silver bullet solution. It happens sometimes. I've had a few, what all of us, think of as home runs. Someone comes to see me and they have nail biting or they have OCD and they take N-acetylcysteine and it goes away. Just like some medications, some people have symptoms and that it just really resolves. But, I always like starting to really understand what in your lifestyle is contributing and not from a blaming individuals way or saying supplements or meds or therapy shouldn't be part of your journey. I mean, for sure, I like all those things.
All of it, everything.
Well, I like people seeing the full menu. I think in my practice, in my clinic, if you come in and you don't like meds, okay. I don't want to turn you away because you're coming to ask for help with your mental health. If you come in and you've got a really complex supplement regimen, that might not be what I would do, but I'm here to
work with you. Yeah.
I work, I sort of say I work for you. I mean, it's like, I'm here to advise you. I'm here to do my best of understanding and my own biases. There's a certain way that I think we should approach mental health. Those are my biases. Some of those are evidence-based. Some of those are just how I think we should do it. But to really be a partner for individuals, the supplements, there are just quickly some where there's a lot of good and interesting evidence. When you look at how Germany treats adolescent depression, they use St. John's wort often. Right? St. John's wort trials in America haven't been positive. That said, it's an interesting compound. You look at some of the new data on like L-theanine or rhodiola rosea. I think just like with medication supplements, there are some positive studies, there are some negative studies.
Exactly.
There are some, and so again, this notion, would I rather you eat fish or take an omega-3 fatty acid supplement? I'd rather you eat fish. What if you were like me when you were 21? And when I say fish, you get nauseous. Those are the types of situations where supplementation makes sense. Or, certainly for people, again, who are on a more plant-forward diet, who aren't eating their clams, right? For sure, I want you taking a B12 supplement and checking, most importantly, also checking your B12 level. And then, as some of my colleagues often point out, and I think it's a really important thing to point out, a lot of people with compromised medical status situations, metabolic disorders, GI disorders, they struggle with some absorption, and the supplementation in some of these individuals really makes a lot of sense. And so, I don't want to come across as like, anti.
No, it's balance. It's a great answer. You've come across with a great answer. There's a menu. It's bio-individuality. Everyone's unique. There's no one, you can't tar everyone with the same brush. And that's what I really like about your approach. Everyone's different. There's a whole lot of ways of approaching us, and it's a combination, and everyone's unique. And that's what really counts. And it makes me think that last night, because I knew I was interviewing you today, obviously, we were doing dinner last night. We had some friends over, and I was making the salad. I thought, let me make a Drew salad here. And it was like,
what was in your salad?
I tell you, we made two different salads, and the one would just, we put the greens in and then added some avocado and added some burrata and added some pepper juice and sprinkled with olive oil. It was divine. And then the other one was peaches and big tomatoes, the whole, not the tiny little ones, big ones sliced with basil leaves, fresh basil leaves, all organic and, farm to table. And then just with a sprinkle of balsamic vinegar. They were amazing. And that combination, it was so good. And it was that fettuccine, the inside of the burrata, the stracciatella cheese. I tell you, that combination was amazing. So I thought, I had to tell Drew what I ate last night, because I was just thinking of you when we were eating this. So thank you for your inspiration, your guidance, your work, your books. And as I said, I'm so excited. I'm co-hosting this great summit with you. And
Oh,
thank you for
well,
your great information.
well, Caroline, thank you for thinking of me during meal prep. That's such an honor. Anybody watching the Sunlight, anytime that I get to drop into your kitchen in your mind, I think it's such a great honor and a privilege. And I want you to hear me cheering. I love this dish. First of all, everybody's heard me. I just got to get into the nutritional. We talked about phytonutrients. There's this one linalool that's in basil. I just posted a little, a social media post of these are the greens that I eat more of than kale, because basil is just, I love it. Linalool is the same molecule that's in lavender. And there are actually studies of lavender aromatherapy that your linalool blood level goes up and sleep quality improves. And I think anxiety decreases. I mean, not the biggest studies, but just again, this fascinating molecule. So I love that you've gotten that in there. And then I love everyone can see a piece of nutritional psychiatry, see the intention, how Caroline lights up the creativity, the flavors, the taste, and also that it's with friends. It's not one salad, it's two salads, right?
Delivered beautifully. Yeah.
Oh,
All of it together. Communication, all of it was involved. The whole
yeah.
making the food together as a family, laying the table, making it look beautiful, the great conversation. That's the holistic. We all felt better
That
afterwards.
hour that you're talking about, the making, the prepping, the set, I think this is one of the most powerful moments in kind of social structure, family structure, for healing, for our mental health, for this, kind of what we want to be, lost in the process of connecting with each other, loving each other, creating something together, nourishing one another.
Love it.
It's such a wonderful, wonderful image for us to end on, Dr. Leaf. I thank you so much, everybody. It's such a treat to get to share all of this information with you all. And I hope to be in your kitchen. I hope you hear me cheering for lentils and pesto and wild salmon.
And add basil.
And basil and peaches and all these wonderful foods that we're surrounded by that really are here to help us heal and help us on our journey to find creativity and connection and deliciousness. So what a treat. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Dr. Talks. We hope today's episode has enlightened and inspired you on your path to optimal health. Each day is a new opportunity to make choices that empower your well-being. For more insights and strategies, subscribe to our podcast and visit our website, www.drtalks.com. Stay connected, stay healthy, and join us next time on Dr. Talks, real talks from real doctors on the issues that matter to you most.